You can watch all the watchJojo videos on your big screen TV via our dedicated Roku, Fire TV, Android TV, and Apple TV apps. The Cree are among the most populous groups of First Nations people in the United States and Canada. For thousands of years before the European settlers arrived on their land, they lived a simple life of hunting and gathering. And today, various branches of the Cree try to keep those traditions alive. These old photographs give an intriguing and intimate glimpse into the lives of the Cree more than a century ago. They show Cree life in all of its complexity, as well as revealing the beauty of the clothing and adornments that the First Nation people wore. But they also document how Cree life has changed over time. There are 8 distinct Cree groups, spread out geographically from subarctic Canada down to Ontario and the United States. And as of 2015, there were more than 317,000 registered First Nation Cree in Canada alone. Around half of them live on reserves. European missionaries first encountered the Cree people in around 1640 in an area near James Bay in Canada. When fur trading posts sprang up in the area around 1670, the Cree began a migration to make the most of the economic growth that was happening there. The European traders, meanwhile, relied on the indigenous people to supply them with fresh meat. In their own language, the Cree call themselves Wisahkecahk, a name that resonates back through time. Originally, the ancestors of the Cree were called the Nduhiyu, which means Nation of Hunters. These people would follow the annual migration patterns of animals. Later, the Cree had their own lifestyles, not to mention unique political structures, and these live on to this day. The Cree's organizational structure involved a number of autonomous groups coming together when major decisions needed to be made. The smallest part of the group was known as a lodge. This was made up of around 8 to 12 people who were usually connected to one another via marriage. The individuals shared a teepee or a wigwam and moved around in bands, and each of these bands were made up of at least 2 lodges. There was also no formal structure of leadership, although roles were taken up by those with proficiency in specific areas. Decisions regarding war and peace, meanwhile, were deliberated by councils made up of representatives from the various bands. Furthermore, the bands had different chiefs in times of war and peace. The peace chief acted as a diplomat, working with other tribes and clans to ensure the smooth running of trade and other important aspects of life. During war, however, a war chief, better versed in military matters, would be nominated to lead the fight. Incoming European settlers had a huge effect on the Cree, of course. Many of the swampy Cree consequently moved west. Hence, whereas before they had used canoes during their summer months and snowshoes during the winters, now they began to use horses and participate in buffalo hunts. They would then trade with the Europeans. A number of Cree also remained in the north, living in the tundra and the boreal forest. Here, the culture of the Cree remained largely unchanged. The people would hunt ducks, geese, and fish, as well as caribou and moose, and the meat was preserved by drying it out over open fires. Yet even these Cree would trade with the European incomers. That said, during 1885's Northwest Rebellion, an uprising against the Canadian government, the Cree played a pivotal part. At the Battle of Cut Knife, they led a masterful rout of Canadian forces. Using the terrain to the Cree's advantage, War Chief Fine Day and his small force of Cree and Assiniboine forced the retreat of as many as 350 Canadians. As for their spiritual outlook, the Cree have their own unique system of beliefs and a story of how the world came to be. A lot of these stories revolve around a trickster known as Wisahkecahk. There's a focus on personal responsibility and a connection to the earth and the creatures upon it, which the Cree relied on to sustain them. Different Cree nations have their own versions of many of the stories, but a lot of them concern Wisahkecahk. The mischief maker was ordered by the creator to teach the Cree to live worthy lives, in tune with nature. Instead, though, he caused all sorts of mischief that led the people fighting with one another. When the creator saw this, he flooded the lands and just 4 things survived: Wisahkecahk, beaver, otter, and muskrat. Wisahkecahk then sent the animals diving into the water to scoop up some of the wet earth that the earth had been made of. Muskrat succeeded, and from this patch of mud, the earth was rebuilt. The Cree religion aimed to teach individuals to be responsible for their actions, and Wisahkecahk was held up as an example of what to do and what not to do in order to live a good life. Meanwhile, food was of course of great importance to the Cree people as well. They shared food in times of need, and when they had plenty, they would hold feasts to celebrate. But it would be a mistake to assume that the Cree nations are a thing of the past. Indeed, the Cree people, especially in Canada, play an important role in their own futures. After years of subjugation and treaties by various government bodies, the sheer number of Cree is something that just can't be ignored. The Lac La Ronge Band, which is based in northern Saskatchewan, is in fact the second biggest First Nation band in the world, with only the Six Nation Iroquois being larger. Around 110,000 people speak the Cree language, and it's an official language of the Northwest Territories. In fact, it's the most commonly spoken Aboriginal language in Canada. Since 1994, various attempts have been made to create a political party that could speak for all the Cree nations. Self-government and greater autonomy are two of the ideals that many Cree are striving for. These, along with more economic control over lands that their ancestors called home. To such ends, the number of Cree nations must have been involved in discussions and agreements with the local and national Canadian government. The Cree were also instrumental in the 2007 UN Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. Yes, the Cree, even in the era of big business, are still a force to be reckoned with, it seems. It's true that these incredible pictures capture remarkable moments in history. They show the Cree people as they were more than a century ago. But the Cree are by no means just a footnote in the history of Native Americans. They're a people who are making moves on the national and international stage.